My brother said, "Dad wanted me running the company, not you," I said. "Then read the will out loud." He smirked until the lawyer opened the folder. Minutes later, he was calling me a liar, blowing up our cousins' phones, and trying to let himself into my office with a key that didn't work. Original post: I'm Evan, 34. My brother, Blake, is 37. We grew up in Charlotte, and our dad spent almost 3 decades building a commercial HVAC company from one van, a welding table, and pure stubbornness. I started helping when I was 19. Summers first, then nights after class, then full-time when Dad needed someone who would actually show up before sunrise. Blake worked there too, technically. But Blake treated the company like a backup plan he could drift into whenever something else failed. He was great at talking, great with first impressions, terrible with follow-through. Dad knew that. I knew that. The whole shop knew that. Still, Blake was the older brother, the louder one. The one relatives assumed would naturally take over when Dad got sick last year and stepped back. Blake assumed it too. He talked about future changes like they were already signed. Dad died 6 weeks ago. Heart failure. Fast at the end. 3 days ago, the lawyer called us in for the formal reading and transfer paperwork. Blake walked in wearing Dad's old watch and the expression of a man waiting to be crowned. We sat across from Carla, Dad's probate attorney. Thick folder on the desk. Yellow pad beside it. Before she even started, Blake leaned back and said, "Dad wanted me running the company, not you." I looked at him, then at the folder. Then I said, "Then read the will out loud." Carla opened it and started reading. Dad left the company, the office condo, the trucks, the accounts, and the trademarks to me. Sole controlling ownership. Effective immediately. Blake got Dad's fishing boat, Dad's personal truck, and $48,000 from a separate life insurance distribution. Then Carla read Dad's letter. He wrote that leadership wasn't about age, volume, or being family by default. It was about steadiness, showing up, protecting what he built from people who confused access with entitlement. Then came the part that changed Blake's face. Dad had attached a memo from the company CPA. It listed $11,420 in undocumented fuel card charges, 2 vendor refunds redirected to Blake's personal account, and a note that Blake had been removed from payroll approval after trying to push through his own bonus during a bad month. Blake went red first, then white. He slammed his hand on Carla's desk and said I manipulated Dad, that Dad must have been medicated, that no father would hand a company to the younger son unless somebody got in his ear. Carla stayed calm. She said Dad signed everything in her office with witnesses while fully competent. If Blake wanted to challenge it, he could. But right then, those documents controlled everything. I didn't argue, didn't gloat. I signed what needed signing, took my copies, and left. Blake followed me into the parking lot talking fast, blood over paper. Family over lawyers. He said Dad promised him things privately. He said I stole it behind a desk because I could never beat him straight up. I got in my truck and drove straight to the shop. By noon, I'd paid $480 to rekey the office, warehouse side door, and gate. I changed bank permissions, pulled Blake off the fuel cards and payroll software, and told Monica, our office manager, that Blake was not allowed behind the counter for any reason. By 200, the text started. You think paper beats blood. Dad was confused. Enjoy the company while it lasts. I didn't reply. At 430, Mom sent one line. Your father decided this last year. He had his reasons. Hold your ground. That hit harder than anything Blake said. Because Mom hates conflict. If she was telling me to hold my ground, then Dad hadn't just made a legal choice. He had made a family one. That night, Blake posted something vague on Facebook about betrayal and snakes in work boots. Mason texted asking if this was really about the company. Dana called twice saying this kind of thing ruined families forever. I ignored them all. Instead, I went back through the last year of access logs, passwords, vendor contacts, and key assignments. That was when I realized Dad hadn't just planned succession. He had been bracing for Blake. Update 1. It's been 5 days, and Blake has apparently decided his full-time job is turning relatives, vendors, and employees into his support staff. The first flying monkey was Mason. He texted me at 7:12 in the morning saying Blake just wanted what Dad promised him and asking if I would split ownership 50-50 for peace. I answered once. I said documents are final and peace built on blackmail isn't peace. Then I muted him. An hour later, Dana called with the oldest son's speech. Blake is firstborn. Blake has leadership energy. Blake should carry the family name. Leadership energy. That almost made me laugh. Blake has energy. So does a grass fire. By Monday, he moved on from calls to stunts. Monica buzzed me and said, Blake's here, and he brought a trailer. I stepped into the lot and found him backing his truck toward our fenced tool cage like he still owned the place. He had on an old company polo and a clipboard like he was staging a takeover. I asked what he was doing. He said taking what was his before I hid the numbers. He'd already loaded 2 recovery machines, a thermostat inventory kit, and a laser level into the trailer, nearly $6,000 of company equipment. I told him to put it back. He said, half of this should be mine anyway. I said, not according to Dad. Not according to the operating agreement, and not according to the camera pointed at you right now. That stopped him. Monica had the lot feed on her screen. Blake looked up, cursed, and started unloading everything like he was doing me a favor. Then he leaned in and said, you always needed paperwork to feel like a man. I said nothing. Just watched him put the last machine down. When he left, I filed an incident report anyway. Not because I thought police were hauling him off that day, but because patterns matter. Good thing, too. The next morning, one of our suppliers called to verify an email from ownership asking that future vendor credits be redirected to a new address. Same signature block. Wrong email by one character, close enough to fool somebody rushing. Not close enough to fool a vendor who'd known Dad for 15 years. So now I had attempted equipment theft and attempted diversion of company money. I spent $1,160 that afternoon on new access control, email protections, and a fraud alert with the bank. Then Mom came by the shop. That alone was unusual. She hates the noise in the bays. She sat in Dad's little office and put one of his black notebooks on the desk. Inside were dated notes in his handwriting. Short. Sharp. Blake borrowed $2,000, didn't repay. Blake used company card in Myrtle Beach, not approved. Blake skipped school district meeting. Mom said your father started writing those down because he was afraid nobody would believe him once he was gone. Then she said the sentence I didn't expect. He loved Blake, but he trusted you. Later that evening, Blake texted that Mom was spiraling and that if I cared about her, I'd stop this before it destroyed her. So I called Mom directly. She answered and said, I'm at Target buying detergent. What are you talking about? That was the moment I realized he wasn't just angry. He was testing lies to see which one worked. Meanwhile, the company still had to run. And weirdly, once I stopped waiting for Blake's next move and focused on work, everything got cleaner. I closed an $84,000 annual maintenance contract with a retirement community Dad had wanted for 2 years. I promoted Lewis, our lead tech, to service manager. Payroll hit on time. Vans rolled out on time. Customers kept calling back. That seemed to bother Blake more than anything. He wanted panic. He wanted me to come negotiate. Instead, the business kept breathing without him, so he escalated. Update 2.5 weeks in, Blake went from angry brother to active liability. A property manager named Erin called asking why my brother told her I was under investigation and that she should hold all pending payments until ownership issues were sorted out. That was the moment this stopped being family drama and became business interference. I reassured her, followed up in writing, and had my attorney send notices to every major client and vendor that Blake had zero authority to speak for the company. By Friday, he showed up at one of our job sites in Huntersville wearing another old company shirt and telling the crew there would be management changes Monday. Reed, one of our installers, recorded part of it. I drove out there, walked past the condenser pads, and told Blake to leave. He said I was embarrassing him in front of his people. I said they weren't his people. They were employees at a job he no longer had authority over. Then he pulled out his phone and said he had a voice memo proving Dad wanted him in charge all along. He played a clip where Dad's voice said, "One day Blake will run things." For half a second I understood why he thought that would work. Then I remembered Dad never stopped a sentence if there was a harder ending available. I asked for the full recording. Blake refused. That night, Mom pulled up the original file from Dad's old phone backup. The full sentence was, "One day Blake will run things into the ground if I keep rescuing him." That was the first time I laughed in weeks. My attorney didn't laugh. He just said, "Save that. We're filing." Then Blake made it even easier. Last Tuesday at 11:43 p.m., he showed up outside my townhouse. Doorbell camera caught him pacing, banging on the door and saying, "Open up, we're settling this now." Then he said the line my attorney replayed twice, "I can see your office light. Don't act like you're not home." It wasn't even an office light, it was my living room lamp. Didn't matter. The tone mattered. He left a manila envelope in the handle. Inside was a one-page demand he'd written himself saying I had 72 hours to restore his position before he took the matter public, legal, and personal. The next day, Blake texted that Mom had collapsed after reading my lawyer's letter and was in the ER because of stress. I called Mom immediately. She answered and said, "I'm having soup with Linda." Why? That burned off whatever sympathy I had left. I filed a police report for harassment that afternoon. My attorney filed for a temporary protective order and a civil injunction blocking Blake from representing the company, contacting clients as ownership, or showing up at the shop or my house. Then the bank's fraud department called and asked whether I had authorized a commercial auto loan application using the company EIN for a new $72,000 pickup. I had not. Guess who had? At that point, even the relatives who wanted to stay neutral stopped trying. Mason sent a weak apology. Dana stopped calling. Monica printed everything in date order and built a 3-inch binder out of Blake's meltdown. Work got better anyway, better than it had been in a long time. I got back to early mornings because I wanted to, not because I was cleaning up somebody else's mess. On Saturdays, I started getting coffee with Hannah, a commercial realtor Monica knew. No drama, no mind games, just quiet. Blake somehow heard about Hannah and sent one last gem of a text, "Dad's barely cold and you're already playing happy family with strangers." I blocked that number too. Court was set for Thursday. Final update: court was last week. Blake showed up in a charcoal suit with a haircut that looked like a last-minute attempt at innocence. He had a lawyer. She said he was grieving, felt excluded from his father's legacy, and only wanted clarity and closure. Closure does a lot of work for people who get caught on camera acting insane. My attorney handed up the binder. Will. Transfer documents. Dad's letter. CPA memo. Vendor redirect attempt. Photos from the tool trailer incident. Customer statements. The full audio file. Doorbell footage. Fake ER text. Loan application using the company EIN. Police report. Dates. Pattern. The judge read for a long time. Then he asked Blake if he had edited the audio clip. Blake said he shortened it for relevance. The judge actually took off his glasses. Then he asked why Blake contacted customers after being told in writing he had no authority. Blake said he was protecting the company from me. The judge asked how using the company tax ID to apply for a truck loan fit into that protection strategy. No answer. Then the doorbell video played. The courtroom went still when Blake's voice came through. "I can see your office light. Don't act like you're not home." Blake's lawyer tried one more time. She called it a family misunderstanding inflated by grief. The judge said grief explains emotion. It does not explain impersonation, interference, or intimidation. Then he ruled. The will stood exactly as written. Blake's threatened challenge went nowhere. On top of that, the judge granted an 18-month protective order covering my home and person, plus a business injunction barring Blake from entering company property, contacting employees about management, contacting clients as a representative, or using the company tax ID, branding, or accounts for any purpose. Outside the courthouse, he tried to stare me down. I walked past him and went to lunch with Mom. She was quiet for a minute, then said your father always knew Blake could talk people into almost anything. He just also knew you could keep something alive. That was 10 days ago. Since then, the retirement community contract formally signed. We closed the quarter up 18% over last year even after all the chaos. I paid down $14,000 on our credit line, replaced one aging van, and gave the crew early bonuses because they earned them. The family noise finally dropped too. Mason apologized without asking for anything. Dana texted that she should have stayed out of it. I appreciated both, but I'm not pretending I forgot the first versions of them. As for Blake, he took the $48,000, sold the fishing boat within a week, and moved across the state line while he figures out his next venture. I honestly hope he finds stability. From a distance, the shop feels like mine now in a way it never did while Dad was alive and Blake was circling it. I had the front office repainted, put Dad's framed contractor license in the hallway where everybody can see it. Hannah has been around enough that Monica already teases me about smiling at my phone. Mom comes by on Fridays with banana bread she claims is for the crew even though she always leaves my favorite corner piece on the counter. I still miss Dad. Every day. None of this fixes that part. Winning paperwork doesn't make grief easier. It just keeps grief from getting robbed. What I learned is that sibling betrayal cuts different because it already knows your shape. A brother knows which childhood guilt to press, which relatives will panic at the word unfair, which old family myths can be used as weapons. Blake thought being my brother gave him permanent access to the company, to my patients, to the version of me that used to smooth things over so holidays stayed comfortable. He was wrong. Blood matters. Family matters. But those words do not mean surrender. They do not mean handing the keys to the loudest person in the room. Dad built something real. My job now is to protect it, even if protecting it means protecting it from my own brother. If you've ever been through something like this, or if you think I should have handled it differently, comment below and tell me your opinion. And please subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss more stories like this.